Welcome to my channel. Welcome back. This week should be a little bit more watch work than normal. So I've got myself a 21 Joule Hamilton pocket watch movement here. It's a really good condition here. I do have it running, but I do think there's an issue still, and the issue is likely, let me get my amazing tweezers out here and I'm going to point to it. The issue is, I believe that right over here, the hairspring, when it's going underneath the balance cock, I think it's just touching the balance cock here. So I've got to adjust that. I'll get better amplitude if it's not touching. And when you're taking the hairspring stud out, you undo these two screws, and when you screw it back in and you've got it in place, you kind of never know whether it's going to tilt downward or upward or touch at all, because some minor adjustments like this need to take place in a watch this nice. So it's been completely serviced. It's been oiled. Its hairspring is in great condition. The mainspring has been taken out of the barrel and cleaned. The barrel has been cleaned. I don't like the discoloration of the barrel here, but there may be nothing I can do about that. This is an old watch and it kind of came looking a bit like that, but that's not a bad thing, I guess. It could easily be replaced, I guess, with another ratchet wheel that might look a little bit better. It depends on the owner, but then you got to find either a sacrifice movement with another ratchet wheel like this, or just put up with this the way it is. So in general, the rest of the movement looks great, and I'm going to have a look at this little hairspring issue and see if I've got a rubbing issue. I'm going to do a slow motion video and just show you what that looks like. All right, let's have a look at this video here. In slow motion, as you can see right there, you can see the spring coming around and very, very close to the balance cock, likely touching it, which would cause a really poor amplitude. Right now the amplitude is just under 360 degrees, I think. So there is the problem we're looking at. Now, in order to fix that problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny piece of Rodico to stop the movement. I'm not going to take all the power off the mainspring here. I don't need to. But I'll take a little tiny piece of Rodico and stop the balance from swinging. And then I'll very carefully loosen the two screws that are holding the stud in place, and see if I can push that downward just a tad, and then tighten that up again and see what kind of amplitude change I'm going to get in that. All right, this is JD back again. I'm going to give you a report on what I had to do here. So as I was saying, that hairspring was touching the balance cock. It's on this side here, so you can see that now floating by. So it's no longer touching the balance cock as it comes around, so it goes through the regulator pins. Let me just see if I may have to put my head down. I apologize. I apologize. So I'm just see, do I need a little light here? There's a little tiny bit of light. So the hairspring is right here as it goes under the balance cock here. It was rubbing against the balance cock. So as it turned out, the problem was in tightening these two screws here. So what I did was I loosened the screws back up. It seemed to free up the hairspring. And then I tightened the front screw first. And if you look at a flat object, tightening that front screw should angle the hairspring just a bit. So it's time to get out the crayons. Alrighty then, so while you're looking at that movement, I'm going to do some drawing. So what I had was, and I'm going to draw it at a perspective, kind of a sideways perspective. So you've got this is the plate on the top, like this, and then you've got the stud in the middle. So I'll draw the plate on the top first, and there's two screws sitting up here, screw 1 and screw 2, and there's their heads. I'm going to flip this around and see if I can draw this upside down for me, so you guys can see what's going on. There are the two screws, and then on the other side of this, it looks like this, and there's a gap in the middle, and that's where you slide in the stud into the middle. Now I'll get up the other crayon and show you what's happening here. So this is the other crayon. So this would go in like this. There's actually another plate in here. So this is This is the top plate, and then there's another plate right underneath it. I'm just going to draw it like this. It's going to be ugly here. That's the second plate. So this screw here is an independent loose plate. This one here that will go up and down when you tighten the screws. And it'll tighten down. There's a gap in here as well. And it's going to tighten down on this stud. So here's the stud. I'm going to draw the stud. There's the stud, and it's a solid stud. So when I tighten these screws here, it's going to squish the stud. The stud actually has a cap on the top, a cap on the bottom, and kind of material there. And then the hairspring comes off the stud like that. So here you've got the hairspring coming off the stud like this, and then taking off and going through the regulator pins and then around the watch itself. So with this situation here, if I've got this giant stud, new picture time. So I've got this giant stud, and it's got a big flat top. I'm going to draw the big stud and the big flat top. There's the big stud like that, and there's the flat top. There's the stud like this, and there's a big flat top on it like that, right? So, and here's the hairspring coming off the stud and then taking off around this direction. Away you go. Now, if I press on the stud this way, like that with that screw, I screw down this side here first, right? This stud is going to end up at an angle like this, like that, which is going to take the hairspring and move it in the upward direction, like that. But if I screw in this screw first, like that, and loosen that one, well, it's going to tend to angle the stud the other way. So the stud will angle this way, and it'll push the hairspring this way. So what I did was I loosened this one, and I loosened this one, and then I tightened this one first, which would have rotated this at an angle. It would have taken this here and then rotated it upward like that, which would have caused the hairspring to go downward, which means that when it goes underneath the big old balance cock, it's going to be not touching. So that's how I fix the problem. I thought at first I could bend this down, and I thought about the problem again, and bending it down would likely do something like destroy the hairspring. It's a very touchy job, so why would I need to do that? What would the problem be? So the problem is in fact the attachment of the screws back onto the plate, and there's really not a lot of room in there to do that. So that, my friends, solved the problem. Now the watch is running quite well. Now that you have the most wonderful explanation of the problem and what caused it, I'm going to just regulate this watch, make sure it's running within a reasonable tolerance. And all I'm doing there is just adjusting the screw right here. And I've got it set to center right now, and I'll just put that in my time grapher and see what that looks like, and then I'll adjust it. And then it'll be ready for reassembly. And in reassembling, I've got to put the face back on the watch and everything else. So, and then we're ready to go, and that's it. I'm going to have a look at the movement itself, not the movement, but the case itself, and make sure there's no issues there, because I was going to take a look and clean the grooves on that case and get that all settled, and then it's done. The watch is done. It's in good condition and working quite well. So there you go. That's my video for today. Hope you enjoyed it. A little bit of diagnostics issues and a little bit of engineering involved. Engineering. So it's not engineering, it's engineering. So which means it's the last thing you do. So make sure you do your engineering. Never do things with a pocket watch until you really, really think about them. So think about it from all angles before you do it. So the first thing I thought was I got to lower that hairspring. And then I rethought and said, well, why would I have to push down on that hairspring? What would cause that at the stud? And then I thought, well, I screw the plates back in to hold that stud in a position. So that might move that hairspring. And I thought about the math, or not the math, but the geometry of it. And screwing that first one in angles that hairspring down. Now it's not touching the balance cock, and we're good to go. So there you go. So thanks for watching my videos. I'm JD again. I got 4 in the bench, and I got a gentleman who's asking me to do 4 of his pocket watches. He said they're all railroad grade pocket watches, and he wants them serviced. He lives in the city of Ottawa. I live close to Ottawa, Canada. So I think there might be something we can do there. The only issue I have right now is that summer months are coming, and I've got family visiting, and it might not be a good thing for me to be fixing watches while there's family here. And I do need some fall kind of stuff to do, but I might be able to get at this. We'll see. So thanks a lot, and let's just reassemble this watch and get it going again. And just a few more things I need to do to make sure that this watch is in great operating condition. Is what I want to do is put a little bit of oil where the mainspring. There we go. Oh, let me hit the camera with my hat. A little bit of oil where this where the arbor comes through here for the mainspring. A little oil on that. And I do want to flip it around and oil the center wheel again just to make sure we're good there. So let me do that, and we'll oil the center wheel. And here we go. Try to drop oil here in the center wheel. It's going to help with any friction that we've introduced, and make sure everything is spanky cleaned off. And then notice I had to put the movement back into the Myers number 58 movement holder, because if I didn't, I'd have other problems. I basically would snap off the pivot for the 4th wheel, and you don't want to do that. So I'm going to just get a quick video of this thing. And make sure I've got decent amplitude again. Yeah, that's pretty good. This will work itself in. I elected to not put in a new mainspring in this watch. I don't always put a new mainspring in, but that mainspring looked pretty good. I didn't want to fart with it and try to find a new mainspring to put that in, so I just recommended that we not put a new mainspring in. And I just have to put some of the watch back together again. Make sure we're good to go. As is always the case with a pocket watch, when you're flipping the watch around, I had these loose to dial to grab the dial, and I want to make sure I put those in and they don't fall out again. So let me just screw those in just a little bit here. There we go. That's screwed in just a bit. Watch is ticking away nicely, and I just need to put the face back in, and then the ring, and away we go. And I wanted to make sure I didn't work on this face until it had support from the movement. I'm also going to give this watch a brand new dial washer, and that's used to keep the hour wheel down. So as I put the wheels back in, this would be the minute wheel falling into place there, and this would be the hour wheel going right over the cannon pinion like that, and then integrating with the minute wheel. This is the old dial washer. It looks it's kind of worn out and poopy. It might be reusable, but only if I had none left. So what I'm going to do is grab a brand spanking new dial washer and use that. So there's a brand spanking new. I'm not sure if that's too big or too small. What do you think? That's not bad. I might be able to go a little bit smaller with that. Let me see if I've got anything smaller than that, because that's pretty hefty. Although the last one was also that big. So maybe that's what I want to do. This is a smaller, these are smaller dial washers, but I don't think these will pull up or push up enough. Enough. So those are, yeah, so I'll put those aside. And I've got my little case of dial washers here that I'll show you in a second. But it's invaluable to have a set of dial washers. So here they are. They're Swiss made. Swiss dial washers, all kinds of sizes. So So it's pretty handy to have a set of dial washers. I think I got 2 of these things, but so you just have to make sure the dial washers are curved upward. Let me zoom in on this just a little bit so you can see what I mean. And there you go, you see the curve in the dial washer there? It's curved upward, and what that does is it pushes the hour wheel down when the dial is down. So when I reinstall this dial, if I just place this dial back on the watch here, it should fall nicely into place here without any issues. I may have to loosen a screw, but let me see which one is tight. Which one is tight? None of them are tight. You got to make sure the setting lever is down, is out of the way, and just put that watch face straight down. I think I have it angled a bit. And let me see here. It's always fun. Yeah. I can see, I gotta make sure I can see the seconds hand through here. And which one is not fitting properly? That's the question. This one here is out of the way, it's good. And maybe it's this one right, where is that? Right here maybe? Yeah, I think I'll fart with this for a second and come back. Alright, it's always ridiculously easy the second time. See, now the dial washer is actually pushing back on the face. So I got to make sure that isn't going to stall the watch any, because that'll provide extra pressure on the hour wheel. So I don't think it's going to cause a problem, but let me tighten these up and have a look at my amplitude after. So I just got to tighten the screws up on the side here. And while I'm doing that, I'm keeping my fingers away from the balance. That's critical, that when you're reassembling the watch, not to touch the balance. Now, I could be wearing balance cots right now, or finger cots right now, but you know what? I watched another ancient video on pocket watch repair, and I saw a whole bunch of dudes doing this work, and it was in a Hamilton watch factory, and none of them had finger cots on. None of them. So maybe that gives the watch its personality. So, well, it's still ticking away here. So we're good. And so now I'm going to just take some Rodico and wipe down the face very carefully. And just take some of the smudges off the face. And I can do that now supported by the movement. So the face has no way of actually cracking. And I don't want to take too much away because it looks very vintage like this. If I clean it up too much, it takes the vintageness away from the pocket watch. And then people go, well, you know, it was a nice watch, but it doesn't look vintage anymore. So, but I'm going to work away at this, and you can see it's a little bit dirty, and we'll come back and see what it looks like after the fact. Now, the best thing about using Rodico is you can only put so much pressure on the watch face with a piece of Rodico. If you put too much on, the Rodico just bends. So I'm able to clean up the edges here a bit. And you know what? The owner actually can buy a piece of Rodico and then take the watch face off and just work on it. Even with the hands on, you can actually just move the hands out of the way into whatever position and work on the area of the face that you want to work on. Just go online and buy a chunk of Rodico, and you'll find that it's not that expensive at all. It's kind of cheap, but it's man's watchmaker's best friend. And you can see how it just cleans this thing up. Now there's a crack in the face here, so I don't want to be too close to that. And I definitely don't want to put any pressure on that, because that could cause other problems. So I leave a little bit of stuff in there. If you get totally anal retentive about taking stuff off, you can also take a piece of pegwood and just sort of get rid of anything that's gummy on here, and that'll clean it up a bit like that. And then after you've done that, you take your piece of Rodico and then you clean up after the cleanup, because there'd be small flakes left over from rubbing that with a piece of pegwood. So I do that sometimes depending on how clean I want this dial to be, right? And this technique here, there's no chance of removing any of the lettering on the dial. You don't want to do anything to interrupt with the lettering on the dial. And the watch is still running nicely here, so which is great. And we're going to regulate that after. See if I've got a decent amplitude on it. I'm going to let this run for a while because it needs to work itself in. And now I want to put that back in, so you know what, I'm going to break my little rule I just said, and I'm going to put finger cuts on here so I don't mess with this, you know, too much here. I don't want to put fingerprints on the very end of the watch here. Okay, now I've got the finger cuts on. I know if I grab the watch here, I'm not anywhere near the balance, so that's a good thing. And I'm going to have a look at the movement now, or the casing rather, to make sure the casing is in decent condition, and take out the screws here. I think as well, I usually clean the case up with Rodico. I don't like to put the case into an ultrasonic cleaner. I also have to put the ring back on, right, the dust ring back on, and I cleaned that up a bit with Rodico as well. There, now I've got the dust ring back on the watch, so it's all unring dusted or whatever, it's dust ringable. And I want to case the watch right after or case the movement right after I make sure I clean this out a bit. Now this is a swinging case, so I'm just going to make sure the edges I've scrubbed up with Rodico a bit, and maybe use my pegwood to get rid of any extra grease on that. I'll sharpen it to make sure it's greaseless. And you can see pieces of crud on it. If you look at the edges, even right here, you can see pieces of crud, but with the piece of pegwood you can get rid of that crud. So I'll use the flat piece first, and then I'll take the pegwood and sharpen it on the end, and that'll let me get to the edge of it, right? And that just gets rid of some of the gum from the past. Again, I could throw this in an ultrasonic cleaner, but it's not going to make much difference. And there is that slight possibility of some of the materials being removed by the ultrasonic cleaner. Some people, you guys can give me feedback on that. I don't think I've had any real problems with an ultrasonic cleaner before, but you never know, right? So I find that the manual method is a little bit better. You know, I just have to take my handy dandy knife that my wife is scared of and peel some of this material off here and just get this thing a little bit sharper so I can get in the edges here of this of the case and get some of the crud out of the edges of the case. And I got to go close up on here to do that. And I'm going to break this in two here because I don't need the whole thing. It's just awkward. So now I've got myself a nice sized piece of pegwood that I've sharpened up. This is using my Husky sharpener with lots of nice blades on it. Get that out of the way. And now I can dig in. I got to go down low here. And I got to dig into the actual threads and stuff in this case here, so I can get right in there and remove any additional crud. And then I'll take Rodico over that just to get rid of anything I've kind of loosened up, because I don't want that to end up in the watch, right? And I'm also looking at the threads that I'll ride the stick through the threads as well, because they tend to collect a lot of crap. If you look at that there, you'll see that all the crap that's being collected there, and you're not necessarily going to get that out with a ultrasonic cleaner. Maybe yes, maybe no, but I'd rather do it by hand and follow the threads all the way along. That way I know that when I put the case back on, I don't have a big issue threading the case, right? So I'm going to work on that, and I'll be right back. So now that the threads for the case back are in really good condition, I can work on the inside here. So you can see how nice a job that Rodico does on that. So I could, again, you could throw it into the ultrasonic cleaner, but there is a chance of it ruining other things. So I don't want to do that. So what I want to do now is put a little bit of oil on the hinge here. I just use, I'll like I said before, I'll use yellow oil. So I'm calling it yellow oil. And I just want to put a little bit on the hinge here. And let that settle in. Get some more like this, and then let that settle in. There we go. And that, my friends, will help the hinge go up and down when I've got the movement back into the watch. So there it is. Just work that up back and forth. Want it to be too loose. And I've got to settle that movement now back into the case. So that would go in flat in, but I've got to make sure I get my screws in correctly. So the movement sits in here, but the retaining screws are on this side of the movement holder. So I want to put that in very carefully. And I always look at the movement, make sure it's still ticking, right? Because it takes a licking, but it keeps on ticking. It's kind of like a Timex, I guess. So we're going to just move that out of the way for a second. I think I can drop this straight in. And I got to make sure, well, I've got the dust cover on, so that's going to protect the movement itself. I'll just get my glasses out of the way and see if I can drop this in. This is all the way out now, so that should be good. And if I'm really anal retentive, I line up the this here, so I can just slide that in. Let me see, is that going to slide in for me? Don't know. It's always a challenge, always a challenge. There we go. So that slid in nicely, and then I just have to push that forward like that. And now the watch should be windable, which it is. There we go. Now the watch is windable, so now I have to open this up again and put in the case screws very carefully. So let me do that. I just absolutely adore the sound of a ticking watch. It's a ticking time bomb. Now opening this up, I think I'll use a screwdriver instead of the watch case opener, because I can wedge that in and just lift upward like that. Now before I do that, I don't want to break the stem, I got to pull the stem out. The stem is out, so that should just slide right back up. Let me see if that's going to slide up without causing any, yeah, there we go. No problem there at all. And now I just support this with my fingers while I grab the case screws. And one goes right here. Hopefully you can see all this wonderfulness happening. That's the one I always worry about because it's so close to the balance. I don't want that to screw up. Hey, is that a joke? And I got to make sure that my screwdriver doesn't slip as well. So that's in there. I'll tighten that later. And the bottom one doesn't bother me as much because if I slip here, it's just going to fall into the case. Is that a problem? Get that screw back in here. Come on. Come to daddy. Come to daddy. I think I need a bigger screwdriver here. I'm using a gray right now. I'm not going to talk about the millimeters of the screwdriver. It's just a gray, okay? And I'll make sure the case is in there. The screws are in nice and tight, because if they're not, and the watch is still ticking. Isn't that amazing? Now I slide that back in, and as I slide it in, this should hook up nicely with the, there we go, and I can put that back in, and I have movement. And so now all I have to do is press the hands back on, and that shouldn't be too bad a job. So I will take a look at this here. I think it's in really good condition. There's no problem there. That should screw over the top, no problem, but I have to put the hands back on first, and like I said before, you put the second hand on and the hour hand on, and I usually put the hour hand on first, and then I make sure it clears, and then I put the second hand on, and then I put the minute hand on. So when you put the hour hand on, you can put it on in any direction, doesn't matter, but you got to hold it sideways to make sure it's clearing everything. So I use hand pushers. Now I have my really good hand pushing device where I could actually see if I could push that straight on, but it's not made for pocket watches. It's actually made for watches. Let me have a look at it first though. All right, here's my watch hand removal or hand device. The boxing confuses me because it goes like this and then it tucks in. And the box came in a pretty ratty condition, but the device came in a very nice condition, and it's got movement holders like that, and that doesn't help me at all with a pocket watch, but it does help me when I'm taking a very sensitive watch and pressing on the hands. So, and it's got different pushers in here too for different sizes. So I can't remember whether the pushers that are in here are big enough. So here it is. Here is the device, and just put this out of the way for a second and then put this down. I'll just angle this camera over a bit, and I don't think this comes out. That's the big problem I have. So if this doesn't come out, I don't have enough real estate to put the watch down unless I put a towel down first and then put the watch down, because I don't want to damage the case itself. So if I just put a towel down, the question is, put a good old towel down, is this going to help me at all? So I'll look at the pushers, and if I look at the pushers from the back, you'll see that this is a nice metal pusher here that might work. I can replace these pushers with plastic ones, which might be a little bit better for a pocket watch. I'm not quite sure whether it makes a difference that I use plastic or whatever, but I did take out a bag of pushers here, didn't I? So here's the additional pushers I have here, but I don't think any of them fit over the top of that movement. Maybe this one here. Yeah, maybe this one here, but I look at the size of this here, and this is really nice. This one here is probably the perfect size. So I could put a towel down here and see if this is giving me better directional mobility. For some reason, this towel has got stuff on it. So let's not use that. I'll just use this. Now I have a very nice, let's see, this is going to be the world's longest video, and it could have been a lot shorter, folks. Now this is the case I use for my very nice glasses with the airy loop, but I'll just throw this down here like that. That'll protect the watch. Now I don't know whether this will line up properly. That's the problem I have. So if I do this and I flip it over to the larger one right here, is that going to line up properly? And do I have enough push when I get to the end of this thing to push this on? I'm not quite sure. Let's just see if I can push this down. It is nice and flat. I like that part. Now, is that down? I think it is. Let me look at this sideways. Make sure it's still ticking. Yeah, we got ticking, folks. I always worry about that. And let me just take my traditional watch hand pushers and have a look. Well, as long as there's enough pipe coming up for the second hand, I'm good, right? So I think that is down far enough. So that's nice. So let me just take this big beast of a watch pusher thing and put it out of the way for a second here. And I just want to look at the hands here and see if this rocked at all sideways or... no, my friends, that is absolutely flat. Can that go down a little further? I think it can. Maybe it can. I don't know. I think it might be good right there. And I'm going to just take my traditional hand pusher here, wherever that is. It's on my bench here somewhere. There it is. And see if that's... I know this clears it no problem, right? Is that... Yeah, you know what? It did go down a bit more. That's much better there. That's a traditional hand pusher. And, oh, still taking. I always worry about that because as you put like pressure on the hour wheel or the cannon pinion, there is that slight chance that you're going to rock it off margin or whatever. So now I grab the second hand. So I'm working on a different camera here, angle here. This is the second hand. So that pusher I don't think is the right one. So I would just leave it where it is. And you know what I want to do here though? I'm looking up close here and I still see a little tiny smudge that I could probably get rid of with Rodico. Let's just make the world's longest video. And this is for the gentleman whose watch this is. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get in here dirty with, I'm just going to scrape this on the back end just a bit. See if there's any way of getting rid of this. That's some of the yellowing, although I think that it's very popular to keep that yellowing stuff on the watch. Even though I'm not sure if I can agree with that or not. I'm going to sharpen this stick up again. And with my Husky stick sharpener, let's move everything out of the way, keep my eye on that second hand. Don't fart with that because you're going to cause all kinds. I'm going to have to replace my mat after this because there's so much crap on it. I think that, but I'm doing another really close look at the face. I don't know if any jewelers would go down to this level and be doing this kind of stuff. I doubt it. And I'm just trying to get some of the stuff that's in between the double faces here. And again, not pressing hard because you don't want to dislodge the face at all. And once you've removed the material, you got to pull your Rodico out, wrap it over, make it new again, and then get down and clean up your mess, right? Just get down there and clean up your mess. And like I said, the watch owner, with just a slight bit of bravery, can go in there and work on that watch face to make it absolutely pristine. But I think, as I've talked to other vintage watch owners, they get all mad when you tell them that you're going to work on a watch and get rid of the some of the character that it has, right? So now that I've got it like that, I got to put the second hand on. I'm really worried about this second hand. I don't want to. I'm just going to get this out of the way, and I'm just going to tap it on the Rodico for a second. I didn't think. I saw a hair. That hair will likely stop my watch. And I just put it on the edge like this and then rock it on. And I push on the top with my tweezer, and that's usually enough to put it in place. And now I want to make sure the hour hand clears the minute hand, or the seconds hand. And so I just want to grab this thing here and then I turn this hour hand around. And then I'll look at the hour hand as it clears the second hand and make sure I have absolutely no issues here. It's clearing it without a problem. Yeah, I don't have a problem, so that's clearing it nicely. And I'll move that all the way back to 12 o'clock. Usually when I put it back, because I know it takes me a few seconds to put this on, I just put it smudging before 12. And I try to get the thing lined up perfectly, because I don't want it to not be lined up perfectly. So now that I've got that on, I need to grab that minute hand quickly and put that in place like this. Got too many glasses here. And if I screw this up, you've got to pull it off again. So I'm kind of fumbling a little bit here. Yeah, it's just before the hour, so I can just put it on this side. And then I need to press it on. Where are my pressers? Where are my pressers? I'm getting depressed. There we go. Here's a pusher and another pusher. So if I push that on, once I push that on, I just have to look at it. That's pushed on a bit, and I just have to look at it from the side to make sure that when I push it on the rest of the way, I don't screw it up. It's kind of lined up nicely. That's not too bad right there. Now what I did there is I rocked it just a little bit, and now it's in place, and it's pretty much at 12 o'clock. That's pretty good there. You're never going to get it exact. It's not a precise science, but... And now you just have to look at it again sideways to make sure it clears. So you look at it like that, as you can see, and that clears nicely. And it's just going to just clear. Everything is just going to just clear, right? Which is good. So the time right now is 12:53, so I'll try to set that to 12:50. Let me look at my Apple Watch here, and I can see the exact time with this. It turns off every time I rotate my... So it's 12:50, almost 12:55. It'll be 12:55 in a minute, so I'll put it on 12:55 like that, and then use my thumb to push this back, and it should be in winding mode right now, which it is, which is good. Now don't overwind your pocket watches, okay? Which means, you know, do 20 turns on it, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, but don't keep turning it until you get to the very end of the mainspring, because that's how the mainsprings become detached. And then you end up calling me up and saying, hey, is there any way you can fix my mainspring? I'm like, yeah, there is actually, but what did you do? And they go, well, I kept turning it and it wouldn't move anymore. I'm like, yeah, okay, what you did was you effed it up. So stop doing that. So that's an easy way to fix a problem with a watch when you do something stupid, is don't do it. So, so I'm going to clean this off like this, and then I'm going to get a puffer out, because the last thing you want to do is remove any... Puff it a few times first, and any dust or anything that might be sitting in here can get removed like that, as well with the movement here like that. And you can see it's already moved by a minute, which means it's working. And a working watch is a good watch. So any watch that works is a good watch. So now I can put this back on here. So it's and those are the threads I was working on before. So, and when you put the case back on, you look at the grooves, right? Right now the grooves are small on this side and large on this side, so that's not right. So back it off and try again, right? And you want to make sure the grooves are all good, and again, that's wanting to go on, and that'll end up stripping your threads if you do that. So you just have to, it's kind of a pain, but it's the only way to do it. And sometimes it's the top of the watch is not, it seems like the darn thing was never made to fit the watch, right? So you do that, and look at that. Look at that. Jerry. It's gold, Jerry. Gold, I tell you. And now I tighten that up like that, and I've got myself a very nice Hamilton completed pocket watch. I'll put that in the regulator and see what kind of timing I'm getting on it, but I'm going to let this run for a day and make me feel happy. So there it is there. I do have this version of the timing device that I can hook up to my computer, so I can put this, I can throw a pocket watch in this. They're probably made for watches, but the spring's pretty tight, but it's all plastic on that side. So I can put that in there, and I can hook that up to my eye timer, which I'm going to do just to see how close it is from a timing perspective. So I think that should be the video for today. So thanks a lot. I'm JD. Welcome to my channel, and thanks for watching. And let's just give her an end right now, and we'll just do regulation on it like we've normally done on watches. And so thanks for watching. I put a little bit more than I thought I would on this video, and this watch should be ready to ship this week. So I've thrown it onto the E-timer here. I've got a great amplitude, 252. My beat air is way off, but that's probably because I'm running at minus 529 seconds per day. So I do need to adjust that. My beat air is way off. That'll get fixed up. And as well, I need to look up what my actual lift angle is on this. So this is a Hamilton 992 movement, and I got my handy dandy phone out here, and a Hamilton 992 movement should have a beat error of, let me look this up here, Hamilton 992 of 48 degrees. So I need to have a beat error of 48 degrees, so I need to fix that, and then I need to actually see what it's looking like. So now in this program called Watch Escapement Analyzer and Timer, or eTimer, I can change the lift angle here to 48 degrees. This software costs a fortune, by the way. It's running at 18,000 beats per hour, so that's all good. And I can test it to all positions here. But what I want to do first is make sure I've got the right beat error, and I think my sampling rate's good, so set that up, and then I hit run, and I'm sure it's going to cause the rate's going to be stupid high too. Amplitude went down a bit to 216, which still isn't too bad, so I can adjust that and see how much I can adjust it. I remember when I got the watch, it looked like it was running slow as well, but it had a crappy line. Right now the beat error is not so great, but it's not as bad as it was, and we'll see whether we can get that into position. You can spend like 6 months farting with this to try to get it accurate, but we'll get it accurate enough to make sure things are working well. And what time is it? 9 minutes after, so it's keeping time nicely actually, and it looks like it's running a little bit fast, which makes no sense because it says it's running slow. So that's it for now. I'll come back after I've done some fixing. Alright, now to regulate this watch, it's sad that I need to do this, but you need to do it. I could have done it probably with the hands off and everything off, so it's not going to be as difficult. But this watch is because it's a flip over case, right, it makes it a little trickier. So I just want to make sure that I do this properly. So I just want to pull this up like that. These finger cots are not on right. They're kind of poopy right now. So this is a thumb cot, because the thumb turns out is not a finger. So there you go. Got to get down and dirty now, a bit downer and dirtier, and pull out the this here, whatever the thing's called, the crown. Pull out the crown, and I need to wedge up the watch, and then I need to work on the, see if I can wedge that up. This is tricky here, and the crown's out, so I don't have to worry about anything. So now what I want to do is turn this here, which should allow me to actually see if I go to the other camera. Are we good here? What if I do this? How about like that? That's a little bit better. I could angle the other camera too, right? Let's try that. Let's try this. And I don't think that camera is working. Let me see. Yeah, let's go to camera 2. What the heck? Camera 2! And I want to get in here, and I don't want to put any stress on that hinge, right? So I got to hold that up like this. And then very carefully I want to screw the regulator to make sure this here arm is going towards fast instead of slow. So I've got to see what direction that is. I think it's this way. And you don't want to drop the I'm going to go all the way over here. You don't want to drop the screwdriver into the hairspring. That would cause all kinds of problems. So I've gone quite a far bit over, and I can tuck the case back in again like that, and then I can put that in my timing device. The thing is actually really accurate, so surprisingly very accurate. And I want to pull that back with all the forces of Hercules, and then just see what this ends up being. So now it looks like it's still minus. It's amazing how this could be minus, right? Minus 190, minus 191. Still not a good rate, which means I gotta speed it up even more, which worries me, but whatever. Something's kind of funky about this whole thing. but I'm going to do that. So let me speed that up and play with the regulation of this watch. So it's as you can see, let me go to the e-timer here. You can see that the amplitude's dropped a bit. It might pick up after, but it's still, the rate's still crazy slow, which makes no sense. I don't want to have to play with the balance itself to fix this. So the last part of this video, I've decided to let this run for a day just to see if it works itself in. The beat error, I changed it a few times and I couldn't get the amplitude to get any better than like minus 400 or minus 350 per day, which is crazy. Not amplitude, the actual rate. I couldn't get it any better than that. So I'm going to let it run for a day because there's a few things I could do to speed it up. I could change the, I could play with the timing screws on the balance, but I'm not sure why this wouldn't run faster when you crank the regulator pins all the way over to fast. It should be running a lot faster when you do that. So I'm going to think about this, but let it run for a day. Just let it work itself in. So it's a good watch. It's working well right now. It's got a decent amplitude, and I'll see if I can't figure out this regulation issue. Any hint that I could get from you folks out there? Obviously it's free from obstruction because it would be running super fast if it wasn't. So it's free from obstruction. The hairspring looks pretty consistent or concentric or whatever the word is for wrapping around nicely. So we'll work on this a bit tomorrow, but I'm going to let it run for the day. So there is no magnetism. You can see a little compass I have here. I threw that on top to see if there was any magnetism, but I had demagnetized it previously and it was demagnetized well, so no issues there at all. So, and it's also keeping pretty good time, even though it says it's yeah, it's actually keeping exceptional time. So I'm going to keep an eye on it and look at it tomorrow morning, see what time it is. So thanks for watching my videos, JD again, and I'll catch you next time.